Ed Bernstein.
Hey, welcome to our show. My guest today is Rabbi Peter Tarlow, and we have a kind of an interesting and unusual topic. I mean, you're an expert on terrorism, but also an expert on Latino Jewish relations. Latino Jewish relationships. Right. I don't want to just, make it male. I mean, yeah. So when you say Latino, it really includes male and female.
Yeah, the Spanish word Latino refers to both
people.
Genders.
Both
exactly.
People. So, but I wanted to ask you primarily, as we start the show, about terrorism,
sure.
because recently there is some video moving around the internet and around the mainstream media as well that ISIS had produced that showed scenes of Las Vegas as potential sites for terrorism. You've been studying terrorism and tourism, yes. which is like your niche is the tourist yes. part of terrorism. Right. Do you see Las Vegas as being a target?
Well, first of all, let me take a step back. Tourism is the major magnet for terrorism. Matter of fact, if you take military forms of terrorism out, the number one group of people who suffer from terrorism is the tourism industry. And that's one of the reasons why for the last 24 years in Las Vegas, we've run a wonderful conference on tourism security and well-being. We just finished it yesterday, Thursday. So everyone is always a potential. The issue is, what do you do to make sure that you lower the probability that you will actually be a victim?
Well, let me just back up now. Why
sure.
why are they so fixated on tourism?
Well, tourism often provides very easy targets. You get the same amount of publicity or bang for the buck if, God forbid, you hit a hotel as an embassy. Mm-hmm. But it's easier to hit tourism targets. They're soft targets, right. They're open, there are lots of people, it's easy to create economic destruction. And terrorism, more than wanting to kill people, wants to destroy economies. Tourism is the largest economy in the world. So therefore, if you hurt the tourism industry, you hurt transportation, you hurt business, you hurt economies, you hurt tax revenues. So without safety, tourism dies. And that's one of the reasons why in Las Vegas we work so hard to make sure that people are safe when they come here.
Yeah, I mean, I recall after 9/11 that, the airline business just kind of came to a halt for weeks.
Yes,
and tourism
exactly.
for weeks.
Exactly.
And Las Vegas suffered significantly. I mean, you could walk, it was like empty casinos for a couple of weeks after 9/11.
After 9/11, after day 2, in other words, 9/12, 100,000 people had lost their jobs here. So you see the economic impact. And that's right. why it's so important to make sure Las Vegas never will do everything possible so that Las Vegas will never suffer that type of problem.
And when you say do everything possible, I mean, what is it that you can really do?
Well, obviously I won't go through to every little detail, but the first important thing is awareness and training. This television program is an important part in protecting the city because it ups people's awareness. Secondly, we bring into Las Vegas once a year at our Tourism Security Conference experts from around the world. We brought 44 countries this year. We had experts from all over the world, and they not only take what they learn here home, but they bring us best practices, things that they're doing in their country, and that therefore implants Metro, the police department, and the hotel security people are also present, so we're learning from each other.
You know, I noticed like some of the hotels here at times will have a security guard stationed outside of the parking garage.
Yes.
So you drive into the garage and they just kind of wave you on in. You know, what purpose are they really serving, and what are they really looking for?
Well, if they're well trained, they're looking at body language and especially the eyes. So you don't have to have a long conversation with someone, but you want to have a sense of suspicion. Do you need to let somebody down the line know, hey, watch this person. Now it's not, no system is 100% perfect. They're all made with human beings. But if they are well trained, in a very short amount of time, they have a suspicion, yes, we need to do some further work, or most likely this person's good to go.
So, so specifically talking about Las Vegas.
Yes.
So do you think that we are on the top of a list as a target?
You know, 20 years ago, I would have said yes. Today, terrorism has gone into what's called soft terrorism. So we're seeing less bombings and more knifings. We're also seeing terrorism take place in random places. So it used to be that you could predict it a place that had a lot of money, good publicity, high potential for deaths, and high potential for economic destruction. Today, the face of terrorism has changed. It can be in a small town, or it can be in a big city. Certainly, Las Vegas has to be vigilant. That would be a major error not to be vigilant. But do I think that you're necessarily more vulnerable than any other large city in the United States, or even a small town today? It depends on the type of terrorism. There's not one form of terrorism, but the media makes it out as if it's all one type. So we have to be careful that there are multiple forms, just like there are multiple forms of diseases.
You're right, yeah. So when you think about the targets, and I was just thinking as I was preparing for the interview with you today about Donald Trump's hotels.
Yes.
Does he have to be worried?
Anyone in the hotel business should be worried. You should be worried when you're not worried. So the moment you let your guard down, that's when it's dangerous. So if I were in the Trump Towers or any major hotel here or any place else in the world, of course you're going to be concerned. Of course you're going to be worried. And the real issue is, what are you doing to try to soften the potential that there might be an attack?
Right. We have this weekend in Las Vegas, there is a concert, Electric Daisy Carnival, ED, whatever it is, 400,000 kids.
Right.
At the Speedway here in Las Vegas. Right. Do you see that as being a target, potential target? Everything in today's world is a potential target. The real issue is, have we thought through good protection? And that means prior, the risk management, and then the crisis management. Can you evacuate people quickly? Have you interconnected your police departments with your ambulance services, with your medical services? Do you know which hospitals can do triage instantaneously? So, only God knows where the next terrorism attack will take place. Right now, England seems to be a favorite. Yeah, and so what advice would you give to somebody attending a concert? Like what happened in Manchester a couple weeks ago, how do you, as an individual going to a concert, what steps should you or should not be taking? Well, first of all, we have to keep living our lives. It would be a major mistake to live in fear, because then the terrorists have won. Now, once I'm saying that, I would do a little bit of thinking. I'd be vigilant, look around me. I would certainly know where the nearest exit is, and I would have a plan. If I had to evacuate, what way would I evacuate that had the least chance of a crowd forming, rushing, and a stampede happening? And how do you find that? I mean, is this what you do? You walk into a public place all the time? Yes, yes. Well, most people never pay attention to exits. You think even on an airplane, they have to remind people where the exit is. Follow those lights on the ground. Exactly, exactly. Yeah. So one, you have to take responsibility on some level for yourself. Certainly the venue has to take responsibility, but so does the individual. So when you come in, start tracing your steps. If you had to do it, and let's say the lights were out, or there were no electricity, could you more or less remember which direction you want to go? Right. How quickly could you get out of your seat? So again, you can't stop somebody, God forbid, who lets off a bomb or whatever, but you can think about evacuation procedures, and hopefully the people running the concert have learned from Manchester and are thinking this through very carefully. Yeah, I mean, you would hope so. I mean, I've always told my kids, kind of the same advice that you're giving. Hey, look at your surroundings. Find, what would you do in case of an emergency. But beyond that, I mean, there's not much more you can do. All of us are, in the bottom line, are in God's hands. And you could be sitting in your living room and a plane could crash on you, which has happened in Buffalo, New York. Or you could be at a bombing and come out just fine. So live your life. Insist that the people who work in security know what they're doing. Get training. That's why we do these types of conferences in Las Vegas. And then the rest, we live because God chooses us to live. Yeah. And what signs should somebody look for? I mean, they're always telling you, hey, you know, pay attention, look around you. If you see somebody acting strange or behaving differently, you know, speak up.
Sure.
What type of signs are you really looking for?
So one, do you see packages that have been abandoned? Two, if someone's dressed in a bizarre way, for example, they're wearing, if you remember the case in New York, the guy walked in with a heavy overcoat at 110 degrees.
Right.
Well, in Las Vegas, you're not wearing an overcoat in the summer. Right away, that should indicate something. Is the person sweating profusely? Is the person kind of looking like this, you know, all around? Those are types of signs that ought to at least possibly be clues that something's going on. Now, you don't want to be too paranoid. The person could be looking around because he lost his wife or girlfriend or whatever.
Right, yeah.
None of that will protect you against a knife. But a knife attack, though deadly, will not do mass damage in the same way that, say, a bomb would do. But if you see something out of the norm, something that seems suspicious, take the time to let somebody know.
In your opinion, why did these guys in Manchester use knives? And they had knives and they had fake suicide vests.
Those were in London.
I mean, I'm sorry, in London. Why would they do that instead of, you know, getting weapons?
Well, knives are, first of all, are a weapon. Secondly, knives are much harder to detect. Thirdly,
you go through a metal detector, I mean, it gets detected, right?
Well, in the case of London, there was no metal detector because they were people in a car ramming other people, got out of the car and started using the knives. So there were, and the people in the restaurant who were attacked, most restaurants do not have metal detectors. So that's a whole nother concept we have to begin to think about. How much periphery do we need to do on places we've never considered, such as restaurants before? That's a whole other story we can talk about.
Yes, Paris, and I mean, there's been a lot of history on that.
Exactly, there's a long history. Israel had to put up with that for a while.
The cafes in Israel.
Exactly. Now, Israel, by law, any public location of more than 500 square meters has to have a security guard who inspects you. So today, really, Israel is much safer than Europe. But if you're talking 20 years ago, that was not true.
Right, but that requires a tremendous amount of manpower
It requires a tremendous, yes, but it doesn't necessarily have to be all cost. It could be volunteers. It could be that people have worked out ways where we have part-time people. There are a million possible ways that we could be helping each other. And the real question is, how much do we care? But the question I ask people is, what will a negative headline cost you? And how long will it take to repair? And so, yes, sometimes it does cost money. And it's hard to do risk management because if nothing happens, people say, why did I spend the money? And if something happened, well, why did I spend the money? But we can't think of perfection. We have to think rather, if we were to have 100 attacks and we lowered it to 5, we've saved 95 attacks. And that has to be the way we need to look at things.
Israel's been living under these circumstances since the day it was created.
That's right.
They probably have more experience than any nation in the world in terrorism. So what would Israel say to the United States? I mean,
well, actually, we brought someone from Israel to speak at our conference. And he's a friend of mine who works very strongly in Israeli counterterrorism. There are multiple things that can be done. One, extremely good training. Two, make sure that you have a rapid response team. A lot depends on how quickly or not quickly you can get people there. In England, if you remember, the police closed down the area around the restaurants in both in Manchester and in London for up to 4 or 5 days. In Israel, it would be 4 hours. So the Israelis have incredibly fast, rapid response teams, which means they get life back going within 3-4 hours.
But don't you run a risk also because in Israel, oftentimes there are secondary explosions?
Yes, and that's already taken into account. The Israelis now have,
responders.
Yes, not only do they have first responders, they have a system of 3 rings, 3 circles. In the first immediate circle, no one's allowed in except the bomb squad and other specialists who make sure the area is safe. Right. The second perimeter is composed of people who are in control. Now, there's communications systems, etc. And the third perimeter is to seal that area off from the rest of the city. But the Israelis have developed a system where in the West it takes 4 days, they can do it in 4 hours. And that means that you have very rapid responses and you get life back to normal.
Yeah, I know they've been teaching the rest of the world for years. I can recall, 20, more than that, 30 years ago, myself, going to Israel, and you'd go on the Israeli airline, El Al,
right.
and the security and the questioning before you got on the plane was unbelievable.
Right.
And we never did that in America, and now, of course,
we're doing the same.
Now we're doing it, probably not as well as they're doing it at El Al Airlines.
Yes. Well, the real issue is not the length of time in questioning. It's rather the ability to judge a person's emotions, neurons, how that person is sweating or not sweating, eye contact, and those things will tell you very quickly how much further you have to go in investigation.
And that's amazing that, there's a whole, a niche of teaching people how to do that, right?
Yes. The other thing is the Israelis give tremendous amount of prestige and good salaries to people in security. For a long time in the United States, we devalued it. So you were just a dumb cop. You couldn't get a better job, so you're a security person. Yeah. Rather than saying, we expect you to have a college degree, we expect you to know psychology, we expect you to know sociology, we expect you to know languages, which means we have to change, in this country, our attitude on how we deal with people in security. That's one of the reasons, again, why we had this conference in Las Vegas, to teach people that security is not 1880, but rather prepare them for 2020.
So would that be one of your criticisms of the TSA here?
I'd say TSA could up the quality of its personnel. And secondly, we don't want security theater. We want serious security. And that means it's having everybody take off their shoes because one person did it, and then say, well, you can get for $100 you can get a clearance, or if you're over 75, nothing's going to happen. TSA has some work to do.
Right. So you think that's a bad policy, having that TSA pre-check?
I don't think it's a bad policy. I think what they did is they realized they made a mistake. The whole shoe thing was silly, and now they're letting you get pre-checked by paying for it. So you're kind of back to where you started, just like the airlines often make the seats much closer together, and then call it Economy Plus, and so then they charge you back what you should have had.
Yeah. The good news is maybe if you're paying that $75 or whatever it is at TSA, maybe they're using the money to beef up security.
From your mouth to God's ears.
You also have, you're from what, Chile?
No, I came to Texas from Chile, but I'm an American.
Okay. Oh, okay. Born in America or
born in New Jersey.
Oh, okay. But you have Hispanic background.
I have Latino, yes, and I speak fluent Spanish. And I have the pleasure of working both with the Jewish and Latino communities. We now have a group where both communities are learning to support each other, understand each other's political needs, understand each other's economic needs, social and cultural needs. And then I lecture, my first PhD is in medieval Latino Jewish history. And I lecture all over the world on how Latinos came to the New World, many of whom were coming to run away from the Inquisition.
Right.
And we see signs of that all over. For example, if someone's last name ends in EZ, like Gonzalez, Jimenez. The EZ was a mark of the Inquisition to say you have sangre sucia, dirty blood. Oh. So if you look at people in northern Mexico, especially in the states of Tamaulipas, Chihuahua, even as far west as, all the way far west as far as Baja California, someplace between 60 and 80% of the population has some Jewish blood.
Wow. And what are the similarities between those two?
Well, I think we have many similarities. Both of us are Mediterranean peoples to a great extent. We're highly family oriented. There's high levels of ethnicity and morality. Both groups are very proud of their cultures and their heritage. Both groups have an understanding of internal unity. Even though we fight with each other, there's still a sense of we both have suffered from discrimination and from being picked on. Both of us know what it's like to be considered less than fully members of society in one way or the other. So we have both negative commonality and positive commonality. This year for the Jewish holiday of Shavuot in Texas, we did a Mexican-Jewish dinner in which in the holiday of Shavuot, you always eat cheeses, so all sorts of dairy foods. So we served cheese enchiladas and other forms of Mexican foods, all based on cheese. In Mexicali, in the California border, along with Calexico, we do Sukkot, which is a holiday called Bus in English, and we have a mariachi band under the sukkah. So it's a way of showing both cultures how we can be supportive of each other and how really we need to help each other.
And to work politically,
yes,
those two are, I mean, they've taken historically different paths politically. I mean, the Jewish population in the United States seems to have, worked through educational institutions to become professionals, doctors, lawyers, professors, that type of thing, and then have political clout that way. And the Latinos seem to have, kind of like taking their time in developing that aspect of it, right?
So what we see here is that both groups can help each other. One of the things that my Center for Latino-Jewish Relations does is it brings key Latino leaders to Israel, because Israel is a society of immigrants, and it shows how Israel has been able to take immigration and make it into a very positive concept. And this year, if we have enough money, we're going to start taking Jewish leaders to Mexico City to speak with leaders in the Latino and the Mexican community to understand some of the problems the Latinos are doing. So the first stage is understand what each other's problems are. Yeah. 2, know your strengths. And 3, help the other guy improve.
The trips to Israel have always, or support for Israel has always been typically perceived as a Jewish allegiance. But it's to a great deal Christian, Catholic, as well as the Muslim. But putting aside the Muslim part of it right now, just the Catholic, what is the importance for Catholics and Christians to preserve the independence of Israel?
The only country in the Middle East where Christians are really free, the only country where Christians are not being expelled is Israel. Israel is the center of the Christian world. It's where Jesus was born. It's the place where the Bible takes place. But that's very important, obviously, theologically, that without Israel, Christianity goes away. Right. But the other side of it is that where in all other countries in the Middle East, Christians are under persecution and Christians are under expulsion, or such as in Egypt, where again we saw another case of Coptic Christians being murdered on the buses. Only one country gives Christians full freedom of religion and protects them as it protects any other citizen in the country, and that's Israel. And you're starting to see that within the Christian community in Israel, where they are now volunteering to be in the Israeli army. I've met with Christian leaders who have said to us, the only thing that protects us, the only thing that keeps us from annihilation is the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces.
Yeah, and so when working in combining or the synergy between the Latino community and the Jewish community, is there a lot of overlap between the community? Is there a lot of Latino Jews?
First of all, there are quite a number of Latino Jews. Large Jewish,
Miami has a lot for a Cuban.
Miami has
Cubans.
Yes, and you now have a large number of Venezuelans who had to flee from Venezuela who are living in Miami. Right. You have, of course, large Jewish communities in Mexico City.
Yeah, we have a rabbi here who's actually from Mexico City.
Right. So you really have, I would call it, we have 3 groups. There is the overlap of Jews who are also Latino. Not all Latinos are Catholic. Secondly, you have people who are rediscovering their Jewish heritage. They may or may want to be Jewish. That's not for my organization to tell them that. That's just for them to make the decision. But they want at least to understand their Jewish heritage. How did the Inquisition steal their religion from them, steal their heritage from them 500 years ago? And how can they begin to recoup that in either religiously or ethnically or culturally? Thirdly, there's a synergy between the two people that as Jews, we need the support of the Latino community, and we have much to offer the Latino community. So together, our symbol is volando juntos, flying together. It's two doves, and we argue that when we fly together, we have a lot more strength than when we're just two birds flying, not in concert, one with the other.
At the time, prior to the Inquisition, was the Jewish population in Spain and some of those other countries, or was it a majority of the nation at that? I mean,
it wasn't a majority, but it was a very large, significant. And Spain never recovered from in 1492, 3 major events took place in Spain. One was this forming of a Spanish grammar, minimal, but there it is. 2, Columbus, of course, sails for the New World.
Right.
And 3 is the expulsion of Jews. Now, it's very probable that Columbus was not looking for a route to India. He was looking for a safe haven for Jews who were going to be expelled from Spain. We know that the Queen did not fund his expedition. Spain was broke. It came from Jewish bankers who were looking for a place of refuge. And while Columbus didn't get to see that in his own life, the bottom line is the New World has been a wonderful place to the Jewish community. So maybe he succeeded far beyond his dreams.
And there's kind of a mixed bag in that, because at the same token, there's a lot of alleged Nazis that came into South America after the Second World War.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Of course, in our country, here in America, that was not a problem. Right. That's specifically a problem in Chile and in Argentina and parts of Brazil. So those are issues that, and I don't think they're allegedly anymore. I think some of them are pretty open about it. But
is that element still an issue in those countries?
It is an issue in those countries, yes, it absolutely is. And these are ways that we need to work together.
Right.
It doesn't do either group good not to speak with each other. Even the Spanish language is connected to the Hebrew language.
So we have about 20 seconds left.
Okay.
In what way?
Well, for example, if the a personal, when you say yo veo a David, you don't say I see David, you say I see the marker a. That comes out of the Hebrew language. That's a direct translation of Hebrew.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Peter Tarlow.
Thank you.
Hey, keep these great relationships between all of these groups that you're working with.
Thank you, sir.
It's important.